the tics. You can't control having a disorder, but he should definitely apologize. And we're not asking for him to apologize because of his disability that he lives with, because he can't control that. He needs to apologize for the harm that his actions caused on national TV.
But instead of these men ever just getting a genuine apology from BAFTA, from John Davidson, from anybody, they were told, and we were all told, that we can't be offended. We need to understand the situation. We need to show empathy and grace, without that ever being extended to those men and how they felt standing on stage being called the N-word. To the point that Delroy Lindo said nobody from BAFTA even came to speak with him afterwards. Then it was kind of announced that sometime after that, John Davidson actually left the award. But it doesn't change anything, especially after we learned that BAFTA and BBC had time to edit out that whole incident, the N-word being aired with these men on stage, and they chose not to. BAFTA and the BBC failed Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, the Tourette's community, and viewers when they allowed the N-word to be aired during the BAFTA Film Awards ceremony. With the tape delay, this moment could have been handled differently. The audio could have been muted in the broadcast, or just the word beeped out, something, anything. The segment could have been edited. Instead, the slur went out. There was absolutely no reason for BBC to not edit that out when they had been editing out other stuff all night before it aired. With the 2-hour delay, the BBC could have removed the N-word slur from its BAFTA coverage and chose not to. Meanwhile, it cut director Akinola Davies Jr. saying "Free Palestine," a clear editorial decision driven by fear of pro-Israel lobby groups. Shame on them.
To those watching at home, archive your loved ones, archive your stories, yesterday, today, and forever. For Nigeria, for London, the Congo, Sudan, Free Palestine.
So removing Free Palestine to them is more urgent and important than removing the N-word being yelled at 2 black men on stage.
If the vocal tick that had taken place at the BAFTAs had been Free Palestine, would that have been edited out? Because we know that it was edited out, Free Palestine, when Akinola Davies Jr., my G, said it during his speech. That was edited out by the BBC because the ceremony took place and wasn't aired until 2 hours later. But then for some reason, the N-word being hurled at Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo, that was left in. A disability is a disability. My thing is, there was a lack of safeguarding from the organisers, from the BBC who were broadcasting it, and from BAFTA as a whole. There is an issue here, and the way that I would say white institutions decide and prioritise what is harm and what isn't. Whether it was intentional or not for the word to be said, it doesn't change the impact that it has on those who it was said to, directed at, and those who had to hear it. Racism, one of the mechanics of it is humiliation. I can't speak for the 2 men who experienced that, but I would argue that it's humiliating. And then essentially people are doing all of this mental gymnastics to be like, well, nothing we can do. These things just happen. They're involuntary. Whilst I understand that, that does not diminish the impact of who, those who are experiencing it. And this is just a microcosm of what black people generally face in society anyway. And I would like for the American Black History Month that we're currently in, some of you need to stop explaining to black people how they get to feel about things that are only directed towards them in that moment.
There absolutely is no explanation for it. If they had time to edit out Free Palestine, they had time to edit out N-word hard R, and they chose not to because they do not care. And they didn't care how that event and incident affected the black men on stage or the black community as a whole. Because even in their statements afterwards, they were asking for grace and understanding for John Davidson, and not the black men that experienced racism, were humiliated on stage and had to carry on.
The thing you should know about this moment is that the BAFTAs were not streamed live, so they saw this happen in real time. Then when they edited together their broadcast, they decided to leave this in, not remove that moment or bleep it out or edit it. They chose to just show you this as it happened, and you should ask yourself, why is that? How they actually put together the broadcast is laid out in this article right here, because they were very concerned about political speech and the potential for people saying things they didn't like. As stated here, the BAFTA Film Awards are not broadcast live, meaning the BBC must edit a 3-hour show into a 2-hour broadcast window. The details are laid out here. Now, one of the things that was cut was the end of the speech from Akinola Davies Jr. Let me clearly say, fuck the BAFTAs. They did not care about John Davidson, did not care about Delroy Lindo, did not care about Michael B. Jordan. See them leaving this in as an insidious choice towards all parties involved. The question we all have to ask ourselves about all of this is why.
I think that's a really good point. BAFTA, BBC put all communities involved in a horrible spot. The discourse online, the justifications, the goalpost movement isn't even surprising anymore. We saw people jump online and defend Donald Trump, posting the Obamas as apes. We literally saw them defend that and say it wasn't racist and it was taken out of context, and them trying to gaslight the black community as if we don't have a right to be offended. Why are people offended on behalf of people who were in the room, who knew him, who were told he had uncontrollable tics and could yell out uncomfortable things? He just made all of those things up. Most people in the room did not know John Davidson, and the presenters weren't actually warned about John Davidson or the outburst, the tics that could happen until a few minutes before the event even began. So even if they didn't want to be subjected to that or were worried about what could come out on stage, it was too late for them to back out. Not like Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were thinking, going on stage and presenting an award, there's a chance that I'm going to be called an N-word with a hard R while I'm talking. Who would think that? Michael B.
Yeah. And I think what people forget is that that word actually means you are someone who is unintelligent. You can't read or write. You're ignorant. That is what that word means. And obviously the two men standing on stage presenting the award are very intelligent and they can read and they can write. But I think the lady, she summed it up very well. Stop telling Black people how they're supposed to feel when we get disrespected. If we want to crash out like a 2-year-old toddler, let us crash out. Okay? Because we're offended. All right? And everybody's offense looks differently. Everybody handles it differently. Now, obviously, Michael B. Jordan and Mr. Delarindo, they handled it very well. They were very professional. They did not give the side-eye slight. Because, see, me, I would have been like, and that happened. Like, because, see, that's just how I get down. Okay. I would have looked over there and I would have been like, are you better? Now, people would have got offended at me because they would have been like, well, this person, they have an issue. I don't care. I said it. I do not care. Just like you do not care if I'm offended. We're just going to have, the I don't care Olympics right now. All right. And whoever gets offended the best wins. And that's it. There's no over offense. There's no victim award. We're not doing the victim Olympics either. All right. It happened. You can get offended even if somebody has a disorder. Stop that. No. Some people are a lot more graceful than me. Right? I try my best to be graceful, but I'm not always graceful. I'm not perfect. No, absolutely not. I'm just saying in that moment, would I have been that person that would have just stood there and took it? No. I would have said something, which is probably why God does not have me in that arena yet. I'm still learning, right? I'm not going to be rude, but I'm not going to be silent either. Okay? And I'm going to say something. And maybe I would have said something to, make it known, yes, what you just heard was very offensive. And I'm sorry if anyone in the room is offended. I am extremely offended. But we're going to move on with the program. Now, I would have done that. Because like I said, that's just me. Apparently, these two gentlemen, they're better than me. And I'll give them that. They were silent and they did what they needed to do. And they were very professional. And Spud McKenzie says, I would have suddenly had a case of undiagnosed Tourette syndrome. It's like, that just fell out of my face. I'm so sorry. I don't even know where that came from. Yeah, it's weird. All right. Now we're getting down to our final article that I wanted to go over. Now, this one I saved towards the end because I wanted to make sure that you guys got to take this one in.
Considered a conspiracy theory that vaccines might alter your mind, that they're meant for some sort of mind control. People said this during COVID-19. They said, oh, you know what? These vaccines might be doing something kind of weird to our brain. They might be doing this on purpose to us. And people said, oh, you are just a wacky conspiracy theorist. Well, now it turns out that newly circulating declassified CIA documents prove that, yes, the CIA actually has been, for decades, potentially researching how vaccines could be used for mind control, as well as many other methods. The documents that are circulating around are regarding Project Artichoke, is what it was called. Now, you're all familiar with MKUltra, but this is a different mind control operation, apparently, inside the CIA. These documents here are called Special Research for Artichoke. They're dated the 21st of April of 1952, and there's a memo and an attachment. Also circulating around is this document here, which is a document from 1977. These are more Artichoke files that were found later, and this is an internal CIA memo that was written in 1977 about these. Whoops, we found more files about this Project Artichoke several years later, a couple of decades later, 1977. Basically, the first set of documents, the Project Artichoke documents and memo, lay out what they want to do. So this says, look, we've got this grand idea of how we're basically going to drug people and do all kinds of weird experiments on them to see if we could control their minds. And it was all hypothetical. These documents don't show that anything was actually done. It just shows that we've got these really crazy ideas, and they're extremely unethical, inhumane, terrible, terrible ideas. And then the 1977 leak of documents say, oh, yeah, well, actually, the government did it. They did all of those terrible things they said they were doing in that previous memo. They did it. And now here's some of the forgotten data and archives that we have from when they did all of those terrible things, which if anybody thinks they stopped doing those terrible things, well, let's kind of wake up to reality. So let's go over what's in this 1952 memo and attachment and the various different types of mind control experiments the CIA was cooking up. And I want you to keep this in mind. You know, if they're willing to take people and experiment on them, basically torture them to where they become vegetables or they can be controlled in some way, then it is not a leap to think that the U.S. government, Epstein, a lot of people are talking about Epstein and whether or not he was a Mossad asset, but also even a CIA asset, which is maybe why the government is covering up. So, the Trump administration's like, we got to cover up for Epstein, because it really is a CIA operation as well as Mossad. It's not a leap to think that Epstein would be with the CIA doing all of these heinous crimes against children, young girls, against people, when clearly what we've seen time and time again is the CIA has absolutely no morals or ethics. They are above the law, and pedophile, no problem. Drugging people, no problem. Murdering people, no problem. All of that is no problem inside the CIA. So, okay, these documents, Special Research for Artichoke, dated April 21st of 1952, the memo and an attachment. Basically what these are is a senior TSS officer calls Artichoke of extreme importance and says no time should be lost in getting Artichoke research underway, offering money and men to push projects forward. So this was very important to them. Says he, quote, did not wish official communications in these matters because he stated that they were too slow, asking instead for a brief informal memorandum of projects that could be done in-house or, they could farm them out to others. Now, the memo proposes developing long-term covert drugs that could be slipped into daily life. Mm-hmm. Drugs that were, quote, administered over a considerable period of time, possibly being placed in food or water that caused either agitation or depression. These, quote, should include chemicals or drugs that can be effectively concealed in common items such as food, water, Coca-Cola, beer, liquor, cigarettes, etc., and should also be capable of use in standard medical treatments such as vaccinations and shots. So there you have it. Oh, those wild conspiracy theorists, they strike again. It calls for an exhaustive study of gases and aerosols and oxygen deprivation. Gas guns, jets, or sprays, both concealed or open, should be studied, it says, quote unquote, along with, quote, possible permanent brain injury and amnesias following lack of oxygen or exposure to other gases. They have no morals. They have no ethics. They have no humanity. You may have seen the conversations happening online lately, but censorship is back and it's happening
None, you guys. It's crazy. Now, I will definitely link the rest of the program that she goes into, but she does go into some more of what's happening with these leaked documents. And so, of course, you guys know I put it in Grok because I want to get the breakdown. And I just ask, can you outline the information? And so apparently, let me get down to it. So yes, it was done in the early 50s. So there was a 1952 reference and 1977 files from Project Artichoke, proposals for unethical experiments involving covert administration of drug substances via vaccines, food, water, and other everyday items. The goals included agitation, depression, or other psychological effects. There were more people depressed today. The other psychological effects, we've got people believing that they're men or women. You know what I'm saying? Like, we see the effects and everybody's like, what is going on? So outside of the spiritual, right, that can be occurring, the physical is also happening. Now, you got to remember, some of these doctors, and she gets into it later on in the video, are eugenists from Germany. Yeah. That's what's going on. So would they mind killing off certain segments of people? There are still people living on what's called Cancer Alley. There are people in certain parts of our country, regardless of their ethnicity, they are in areas where they are literally being poisoned. But my question, are they being poisoned and watched and documented? Like lab rats? Like, this is sick. Like, at a certain juncture, we're just going to have a conversation with our government and say, enough. We know how disgusting everything is, and we're tired. If you do not turn the tide, we, the American people, are going to have to. Enough. Close our borders, deport and denaturalize people that shouldn't be here, and stop poisoning us and telling us we're the crazy ones. We're not the crazy ones. You've been killing us and poisoning us for years. We're not the crazy ones. Sorry. Now, other methods mentioned were gases, electric shock, dietary manipulation, and hypnosis. Alleged implementation on prisoners or unwitting subjects. We're the unwitting subjects if they're putting this stuff in beer and sodas and all this other craziness, right? The host connects historical program to the broader concerns about government overreach, unethical